per second sustained. This is something Google is already working on, making happen in Kansas City, Kansas, where we're building a super fast fiber network, as everybody knows. If you go to Korea and Japan, where those networks have already been built, you can see it. It's really life-changing. So we're beginning to see science fiction become a reality, thanks to these changes. Think back to Star Trek, or my favorite, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Much of what writers imagined is possible. Translation, voice recognition, ebooks, all routinely in use today. Think about Google Maps. Now, these were the stuff of science fictions until very recently, and these things all happened faster than even scientists predicted. And while we overestimate short-term technological change, we tend to massively underestimate the more seismic shifts that take place long-term. The people who predict that holograms and virtual reality and self-driving cars will be commonplace quite soon are absolutely right. And these technological advances will redefine the way we live, the way we interact with each other. So think about the choices that you're so often forced, if you will, to make in life. You need to go to a conference across the world for work, and at the same time your favorite artist is playing live. Well, in the future, you'll be able to dispatch a robot, for example, to each venue, allowing you to experience both events. A little robot, by the way, you can pack them in, using a 3D screen and a control system. Or you can stay in your office at home, stand back and observe what both robots are experiencing simultaneously, or step in and control your robotic presence appropriately. So the next day, you won't be flying back across the Atlantic, so you'll be able to make your daughter's soccer game after all. Or think about the terrible road accidents, something much more serious than what I was just talking about, that you see in the press, or the traffic jams that you get caught up in all the time. Nearly 370,000 people lost their lives on U.S. roads in the last 8 years, 93% of them due to human error. Using technology to improve safety on roads and cut congestions will improve all of us. Think about the number of lives saved by this kind of stuff. And driverless cars are a lot closer than you think. Google's cars, which I think people have heard about, have already driven over 200,000 miles, and other companies and research institutions are doing groundbreaking research, thinking about this and trying to make this stuff happen. And in America, states like Nevada, Florida, and California are now making the law possible for these things to actually end up on the roads, and they will be safer. That's the important point. But the progress that we'll experience won't be just as individuals. You'll see really smart things happening that will improve the way our societies operate. Now, the trend of big data, and everybody understands this is a core trend of computer science, this trend of big data in computing will allow society to get much better insight into how people and communities function. Governments will be better able to spot economic indicators, right? Maybe they'll even see a crisis faster than the last one that they created, right? Doctors will be able to accurately predict the outbreak of disease. Teachers will get a better understanding of what works best for kids. And transparency will transform the way governments operate, forcing bureaucrats and politicians to be more open in their decision-making. So there's an emerging global group of global citizens, inspired by people like Steve Jobs, who believe society can be shifted by these platforms, that the way we organize ourselves can make a difference. That these passions, that the people are so passionate that it borders on the religious, but the important and the ultimate achievement in this vision of the future is that technology actually disappears. Now, I don't mean technology becomes less relevant. I mean it becomes part of everyday life. The people will have to spend less time getting technology to work, right? The years of debugging your PC long gone. Instead of worrying about which cable or which computers or where your content is stored, because it's also seamless. It will just be there. The web will be everything, but it will also be nothing. It will be like electricity, just always there. So as a result, people will instinctively trust in technology and have a greater faith in the technology that's part of their lives than in any other institution. And the future is indeed a very bright place. Now let's consider another group of people. Just below the group I'm describing is another group. It's a much larger group, but it's also technologically advanced. I'm going to call them the connected contributors. Now, this is a generation who grew up with increasingly sophisticated technology as part of their daily lives. Born into households connected into broadband with multiple computers, equipped with skills and digital literacy to use them, but they're also members of the middle class. But this new technology will still open the world, new worlds for all of these connected contributors. Holopresence, for example, right? You don't have all the expense that I was highlighting in the first group. People will be able to rent or borrow a mobile device for a specific location. They can use holographic projectors to project their appearance, captured in real time from their own mobile device, while watching a live video from the remote location. Imagine being able to stand among the street performers in the Grand Market of Marrakesh, in the heart of the Congo during a total eclipse, or in North Korea whenever the regime has its first real election. These would be sort of amazing moments to participate in, and you'll be able to do it. The cloud will be equally transformative, obviously. We talked a lot about this for small businesses. All of the chores of enterprises, payroll, inventory management, supplier relationships, and so on, will easily be handled by the cloud, where existing servers can provide powerful, low-cost applications for all, and everyone agrees with this now. So if you have, for example, a good idea for a clothing line, you'll be able to leverage cloud applications to design outfits, contract with factories, establish a digital storefront, lease a physical space, take delivery, and open for business all within 24, 48 hours. And if successful, you'll be able to scale your business faster than ever before. Lowest barrier to entry, huge scale opportunity. Why does this matter? Or is this just some novelty? Because apps and services like these are improving the experiences of the growing middle class. There's this global middle class that's coming in as a result of globalization, etc. And they're going to play a decisive role in changing society. Now, not everybody's alike. There'll be a divide between, for example, those who build and those who buy. Those who build will harness entrepreneurial energies and new tools and forms of expression. In this century, computer science, I'm very proud of this, is much more than just the science of computers. Coding is more than just writing programs. Tools like speak-to-tweet or Ushahidi, quickly designed to deal with extreme circumstances. And crises are perfect examples. By combining passion and talent, developers have created tools which were used by dissidents and activists all over the world to overcome government restrictions and barriers to freedom. Now, developers are the engineers of human freedom in that sense, that talented people all over the world will create the change that we need. To the extreme, these builders blur into the privileged few, keeping the dream of upward mobility alive and well. Now, of the larger group that I'm calling out in this case, those who buy will be more reactive. They're going to navigate the world by information through intuition rather than by specific understandings. They're going to not create new tools. They'll just tend to purchase the creations of others. However, those who buy will be sophisticated consumers, the 90% that engages, responds, and collaboratively filters the content produced by the 10%. Economically, those who buy will work for businesses and governments and nonprofits, and they'll sustain the key institutions of every society. Being most invested in the common spaces of the web, they'll speak with a loud voice and defend those common spaces from attacks on freedom of expression and basic human rights. And I've always believed this. I've always believed that the web is more than a network of machines. It's a network of minds that's evolving into a collective intelligence and a global conscious. You just look at this. Look at this. Every day you see it. It's extraordinary. Look at the way people came together last year to help the victims of the Japanese earthquake. This terrible thing happens, guys. We see this in moment of crisis and tragedy and joy, and it is the web that unites us in sentiment and action. There's another group that I want to talk about. I'm going to call them the aspiring majority. And although the connected computer groups that I identified earlier are a rapidly growing community, they're still a minority. There is another future that awaits for the next 5 billion. For many people, the web is still a scarce resource. And we always forget about these people. We assume that everybody's like us, but they're still bandwidth challenged. In the communities all over the world, there will be only pockets of connectivity, digital oases, if you will, in online deserts. And most have no connectivity at all. They don't have local data centers or even copper wires in the ground. These are people who live in the most remote regions and the poorest regions of the world, and the internet has yet to arrive for them in any meaningful way. Over the next decade, there are going to be many, many improvements to the digital infrastructure of their developing world. Wired networks will get faster and go farther and so forth. In coming years, the number of new data centers, for example, in markets like Southeast Asia, Turkey, and China will boom, and more communities will have stable, direct access to the internet. Fiber optic connections will obviously be widespread. We all know this. As the general infrastructure improvements lead to falling installation costs. Fiber gets faster and cheaper, and WDM technology, everybody here has heard about this, allow existing fiber optic cables to carry more data without upgrades to the backbone infrastructure that's already in place. For certain, this still is not going to be sufficient to give everybody the same online experience, and there's a limit to the amount of new infrastructure that will be laid, if you will, by 2020. In some parts of the world, it would be impractical to serve communities with large-scale fixed-line web connections. But this is not the only way to get people connected. We cannot, it's important to say, we cannot simply imagine the future by extrapolating from the past. You know, as data access arrives at scale among these aspiring majority, they're skipping dial-up modems. Remember those? I really love those. DSL lines, right? Broadband, they're going straight to high-speed wireless connections for mobile phones using standards like 4G, which is, of course, a big theme of this conference. So the smartphone revolution will be universal, and a mobile experience that, at least at the level of today, will be available to pretty much anybody at a fraction of the price. Now, in 12 years, doing the math, Moore's Law, handsets 20 times or more faster, phones that cost $400 will cost $20. If Google gets it right, there'll be an Android in literally every pocket. At the current growth rate, it's certainly possible. Let's hope so. And for people living on $1 a day, that's still a big investment, but it will be strategic because mobile will change lives. So imagine in the future when every handset could become preloaded. Let me give you an example to make this point. Preloaded with a basic medical diagnostic tool that helps you diagnose with picture and sounds ailments you might have. Take a picture. Phone has a camera. So phones could automatically search nearby medical facilities to determine, you know, where appropriate medications are available, refer you to the local doctor, or remind you when you're due for another dose, or that sort of thing. If necessary, the application can refer you to a specialist, automatically sending information about you and so on. We know that even nomadic peoples are willing to invest in technologies that make a big difference in their daily lives. Things like satellite dishes and television. So we absolutely know that this will be true for smartphones. Now, it's important to say, smartphones are part of the solution, but having a smartphone is not enough to get you online. You still need a data connection, after all. You know, a smartphone without a data connection is sort of lonely. But smartphones don't have to talk to a central hub. Again, this is our model is somehow that they're always connected to these brilliant internet 4G connections, but they don't have to be. They can just talk to each other, sharing data in some sort of a peer-to-peer relationship without an intermediary. These are generally known as mesh networks. A network where the mesh is the constituent parts and things are forwarded among the mesh nodes. Mesh networks don't even have to be connected to the internet to be useful. Instead of connecting everyone to a centralized web infrastructure, communities could simply beam local data from machine to machine to share local content. In fact, Android, you can beam from handset to handset without a cord, using Bluetooth and other technologies. They can also be connected, obviously, by the web by an internet-enabled server. So mesh networks you could build, for example, using Wi-Fi or even over 4G. So why do I talk about mesh? Well, mesh is a simpler option. It's a stepping stone for getting communities connected. And if we ignore this, we ignore the reality of all of these people who are just trying to get a basic level of connectivity. So this is the most decentralized form of digital infrastructure possible, and by far the cheapest to deploy. So anybody with a solar collector can have a server and build a local network, and you can charge the smartphones with the necessary solar equipment. So even when the data connections are unreliable, text messaging and interactive IVR basically are the last line of defense. There are 5.9 billion mobile subscribers. There are more than 600 million in Africa. China, nearly 1 billion. 2/3 of these devices are feature phones, not smartphones. And some people are still going to be using them at the end of the decade. And no one is suggesting that technology will suddenly transform the social, political, and economic conditions of communities. But connectivity, even modest amounts, certainly changes lives. It enables people to become more resourceful. Anyone, anywhere will be able to run a business, a school, a news outlet from home, you know, wherever it might be. If an Angolan teenager has created a compelling piece of music, he might want to hire an American to help arrange the viral marketing and arranging virtual performances. That's what's so interesting about this. It works both ways. It works for them too. So in this sense, the network becomes, think of it as a digital watering hole where people meet and hang out. Communities are drawn closer together. People live in communities everywhere in the world. So people can access the network